Why do humans come in different colors? The answer is simpler than you think, and significantly more interesting than anyone told you in school. Let's start at the beginning. Not the beginning of humanity, the beginning of skin. Around 500 million years ago, the first vertebrates developed skin as a protective barrier between their internal organs and the outside world. It kept things in, it kept things out, it regulated temperature. It was, by any measure, one of the more useful biological innovations in the history of life on Earth. But skin has another job that most people never think about. It is the primary interface between your body and the sun. And the sun, while essential to life on Earth, is also trying to damage your DNA every single day. This is where color comes in. The pigment responsible for human skin color is called melanin. It is produced by cells called melanocytes, which sit in the deepest layer of the outer skin. Every human being on the planet, regardless of where their ancestors came from, has roughly the same number of melanocytes, around 1,000 to 2,000 per square millimeter of skin. The difference is not how many melanocyte cells you have. The difference is how much melanin those cells produce and what type. There are two types of melanin: eumelanin, which is brown and black, and pheomelanin, which is red and yellow. The ratio and quantity of these two types, combined with other factors like skin thickness and blood flow, produces the full spectrum of human skin tones, from the deepest brown to the palest pink. But why do different populations produce different amounts?
The answer is geography, and it has everything to do with ultraviolet radiation. Ultraviolet radiation, UV, comes from the sun. It penetrates the atmosphere and hits your skin every time you go outside. UV radiation does two things that are relevant here. First, it damages DNA. Second, it triggers the production of vitamin D in the skin. These two effects are in direct tension with each other. Too much UV and you get DNA damage that can lead to skin cancer, reproductive problems, and the breakdown of certain essential nutrients. Too little UV and your body cannot produce enough vitamin D, which is critical for bone health, immune function, and a range of other biological processes. The human body needed to find a balance, and over tens of thousands of years it did, in different ways, in different places. Here is where the story gets interesting. Around 1.2 million years ago, early human ancestors lost most of their body hair. Before that, our ancestors were covered in fur, much like other great apes. The fur provided some UV protection. But as hominids began to spend more time in open environments, particularly in equatorial Africa, staying cool became a bigger problem than UV protection. Losing body hair allowed for more efficient sweating and better temperature regulation. But losing fur also meant losing UV protection. The skin, suddenly exposed to the full intensity of equatorial African sun, needed a new solution. The solution was melanin. Populations living near the equator, where UV radiation is intense year-round, evolved to produce large amounts of eumelanin. Dark skin absorbs UV radiation before it can penetrate to deeper layers of skin, where DNA damage and folate breakdown occur. Folate, also known as vitamin B9, is critical for DNA synthesis and repair, and is particularly important during pregnancy. UV radiation breaks down folate in the bloodstream. A pregnant woman with severe folate deficiency is at serious risk of neural tube defects in the developing fetus. In evolutionary terms, dark skin near the equator was not just a cosmetic adaptation, it was a reproductive one. The evidence for this is striking. The closer a population's ancestral homeland is to the equator, the darker their average skin tone. This correlation holds across continents. It is not a coincidence. It is natural selection working exactly as expected. But then humans started moving. Around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, modern humans began migrating out of Africa. They moved north into Europe and Asia,
east into the Pacific, and eventually across the land bridge into the Americas. As they moved further from the equator, the UV environment changed dramatically. At higher latitudes, UV radiation is weaker and more seasonal. In northern Europe in winter, there are months where the angle of the sun is so low that almost no UV reaches the surface at all. The problem of too much UV largely disappears, but a new problem emerges: not enough UV, not enough vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiency causes rickets, a disease that softens and weakens bones, leading to skeletal deformities. In severe cases, it can cause pelvic deformities in women, making childbirth dangerous or impossible. Again, in evolutionary terms, this is a reproductive problem. Natural selection acts strongly on reproductive success.
Populations that moved to high latitudes needed to absorb more UV, not less, in order to produce enough vitamin D. Dark skin, which is excellent at blocking UV near the equator, becomes a disadvantage at high latitudes, where you need all the UV you can get. So over thousands of generations, populations in northern Europe and northern Asia evolved lighter skin. Less melanin meant more UV penetration, which meant more vitamin D synthesis, even in low sunlight environments. This is why, broadly speaking, populations from equatorial regions have darker skin, and populations from high latitudes have lighter skin. It is not culture, it is not random. It is a direct biological response to UV environment built up over thousands of generations of natural selection. But the story is more complicated than a simple north-south gradient. Diet plays a significant role. Populations in the Arctic, the Inuit, for example, live at extremely high latitudes where UV is vanishingly scarce for much of the year. By the logic of the vitamin D argument, they should have very light skin. But they don't. Inuit populations have relatively darker skin compared to other high-latitude populations, like Scandinavians. The reason is diet. Traditional Inuit diets are extremely rich in vitamin D, from fish, marine mammals, and animal organs. When your diet provides enough vitamin D, your skin does not need to be light to manufacture it. The selective pressure for light skin disappears. The Inuit retained relatively more melanin because they never needed to lose it.
This is a crucial point. The UV vitamin D explanation is not the only factor. Diet, altitude, cloud cover, lifestyle, and the specific history of each population all play roles. Human skin color is the result of multiple, overlapping pressures acting over extremely long time periods. There is also the matter of how recently some of these adaptations occurred. Light skin in European populations is surprisingly recent. Genetic studies have found that the mutations associated with light skin in Europeans became widespread only around 6,000 to 12,000 years ago, a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms. Early European hunter-gatherers, despite living at high latitudes, appear to have had significantly darker skin than modern Europeans. The shift to agriculture reduced reliance on meat and fish, reducing dietary vitamin D, and may have increased the selective pressure for lighter skin to compensate. This means that the skin tones we associate with specific regions today are not ancient, fixed features of those populations. They are relatively recent adaptations, still in progress, shaped by forces that are themselves changing as human diets and lifestyles shift. There is one more piece of the puzzle worth understanding. The full range of human skin color, from the darkest to the lightest, represents an extremely small amount of genetic variation. The genes involved in skin pigmentation account for a tiny fraction of the human genome. When scientists compare the DNA of people from different parts of the world, the genetic differences related to skin color are minuscule compared to the total genetic variation between individuals. Two people from the same population can be more genetically different from each other than either of them is from someone on the other side of the planet. Skin color, in other words, is a surface adaptation. Literally, it is the outermost layer of the body responding to a specific environmental pressure, UV radiation, over thousands of years. It tells you where someone's ancestors lived in relation to the equator. It tells you almost nothing else. It does not correlate meaningfully with intelligence, disease resistance in general, athletic ability, personality, or any of the traits that humans have historically and incorrectly used it to predict. The science on this is not ambiguous. It is not debated among researchers. The variation in skin color is skin deep in every sense of the phrase. The reason humans come in different colors is the same reason that some animals are darker in sunny environments and lighter in darker ones. It is adaptation. It is geography. It is tens of thousands of years of populations responding to their specific UV environment.
We are all, at the most basic level, the same species, solving the same problem. Too much sun, not enough sun, in different ways, in different places, over thousands of years. The result is the full spectrum of human skin tone. Every shade of it is a solution. Every shade of it worked. That is why we are all still here,